They said it was just another hearing until Dan Goldman pulled out a shocking plan tied to Donald Trump, one that could let a president seize voting machines. And suddenly, this wasn't politics anymore. This was about the future of American democracy.
ICE is obstructing state and local criminal prosecutions. A May 8th, 2025 article entitled, "He Faced a Possible Prison Term for Assault. Instead, He Was Deported." A December 26th article entitled, "As ICE Ramps Up Deportations, Texas Prosecutors Say They're Losing Key Witnesses in Criminal Cases."
Objection.
A July 12th article entitled, "ICE Deportations Are Derailing Colorado Criminal Prosecutions."
Objection.
A January 26th article entitled, "Prosecutors Stunned as ICE Let Suspect in $100 million Jewelry Heist Leave U.S."
Objection.
And a February 13th article entitled, "Father Who Found His 11-Year-Old Murdered in Texas Nearly Deported by ICE Before He Could Testify."
Objection.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Gentleman from New York is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Noem, about 3 weeks ago, you stood at a press conference and said, and I quote here, "When it gets to Election Day, we've been proactive to make sure we have the right people voting, electing the right leaders to lead this country." We all know what you mean and meant by the right people voting to elect the right leaders, but I want to narrow in on a different part of it. What proactive measures have you taken to make sure that the right people vote for the right leaders?
The job of the Department of Homeland Security is to secure our critical infrastructure, and elections are deemed by statute in law
I understand
as
that.
critical
That's
infrastructure.
long
Well, no,
before. What proactive measures
So what that
have you
means is
taken?
that we go forward and identify vulnerabilities that may exist in that system, and then how that applies to elections is talking with states who run elections, identify and help them see how they can possibly be
I understand,
compromised.
yes,
And then we
supposed
offer
to do that, but let's
mitigation.
discuss, if we don't mind, just to reclaim my time, because I want to move forward, some of the other possibilities that have been floated for how you will take or might take proactive measures to, quote unquote, make sure that the right people vote and elect the right leaders. Yesterday in the Senate hearing, you were asked a couple times about whether you would or would not station immigration agents at polling sites. A couple of times you said you have no plans to do so. Is that still your testimony?
That is, I have no plans.
Okay, so we all know that no plans today can turn into full plans tomorrow, so it doesn't answer the question. And you're still, am I right, unwilling to say that you will not send DHS agents to polling places. Is that correct?
I'm not certain why you and the Democrat Party are so concerned that that would actually happen. That must mean that you're indicating people would be showing up at the polls to vote illegally, or that you would want illegal aliens to show up
Okay, so
and
let's
vote.
talk about that, because this is the
what you
big
think will
voter
happen?
fraud theory, right?
No, it's.
You're
I'm
aware
wondering
of the
what you're
Heritage
concerned
Foundation,
about.
right?
Because I have not
Are
recommended.
you aware of the Heritage Foundation?
Yes, I am, but I have not
Okay,
recommended.
so the Heritage Foundation, correct me if I'm wrong, is a right-wing think tank, created, drafted Project 2025, and it's been on a crusade to convince the American people that voter fraud by undocumented immigrants is a big deal. You know what the problem is? Is that you never talk about any actual evidence. And in fact, the Heritage Foundation's own information, its own data, says that in the 32 years from 1992 to 2024, out of 2 billion votes cast, 10 undocumented immigrants were found to have committed voter fraud. 10 out of 2 billion. Does that sound like a significant problem to you, that your answer about why you might put immigration agents is because there's voter fraud?
Individuals there, and I would think that if you have one
So you don't
person
think that
voting
voter fraud is a
improperly in
problem?
election.
So is it your testimony you don't think that voter fraud is a problem now?
I didn't say that. I said I have no.
Do you have any evidence ever, any data,
There are illegal
anything?
immigrants that have voted in elections.
Yeah, they're
before.
10.
That has happened.
They're 10.
And you
Do
think
you
they
have
should-
evidence more of that in
So
the last 30 years?
Are you arguing that they should be able to vote? Is that your argument today?
No, Madam Secretary.
Well, wouldn't you
I'm
want to
arguing
fix
that
any
it doesn't
fraud
ever materially impact an election, and yet
We've had
you like
elections
to,
in
with
this
your
country.
snarky attitude, throw back that we want undocumented immigrants to vote, which is absolute bogus. In reality, you want to create an excuse to terrorize our polling places. Not only that, are you familiar with this proposed executive order, 17 pages, that's been circulating?
I am not. What is it on?
It is a proposed executive order on establishing the security, integrity, and transparency of elections. And in it, it would propose that the president declare a national emergency, use executive authority to seize voting machines, and ban mail-in ballots. You've not seen this at all?
I have not read that, and I have not had those conversations with anyone at the White House.
You've not had any conversations with anyone at the White House. That's good to know. If you were asked to do any of those things, do you believe you have the constitutional authority to do that?
We are looking at the vulnerabilities to elections,
That's not my
making
question.
recommendations to states.
Do you
on what they
think
can
you
do
have the
to make sure they have
constitutional
secure
authority
elections.
to seize voting machines, to seize voter rolls, to prohibit mail-in ballots? Do you believe you have that constitutional
I've not
authority?
done an analysis on that, so I would not be able to speak as.
You're the secretary of the department that is in charge of maintaining election security. You don't know what your authority is or is not?
My authority is to identify vulnerabilities and to recommend.
Well, it would be
mitigation
helpful in
measures.
executing that authority if you knew what your authority was.
Time of the
I do know
gentleman.
I yield
what my
back.
authority is.
I do think the secretary knows the right people voting are citizens, something that we passed the bill to make sure that happens. And I assume that's what she was referencing when she made that statement.
You should look at the Heritage Foundation study too, Mr. Chairman.
No, I'll be happy to look at it. I just think citizens should vote. You guys think that that shouldn't be a requirement.
So do we.
I now
So
want
do
to
we.
recognize
It's just
the
not an issue. It's not a
former
problem, and
Attorney
yet you keep
General.
talking about it.
Gentleman's time has expired. I now want to recognize the former Attorney General.
What you just watched might seem chaotic at first glance, but underneath all of that back and forth is something far more serious and, frankly, far more dangerous. Because when Dan Goldman started connecting the dots, he wasn't just talking about isolated issues. He was exposing a pattern of power being stretched, tested, and in some cases, outright abused. Let's be clear about what's happening here. On one side, you have serious allegations tied to the so-called Epstein network. Questions about who knew what, who was involved, and why accountability has been so elusive when it comes to powerful individuals. Goldman makes a critical point here. We're not dealing with random actors. We're dealing with a system where wealth and influence can shield people from consequences. And instead of laser focusing on those crimes, on justice for victims, on transparency, on truth, what do we see happening? Distractions, political targeting, attempts to redirect attention away from the powerful and toward convenient political opponents. That's why Goldman pushes back so hard, because oversight committees are supposed to do one thing above all else: hold power accountable, not weaponize investigations, not chase headlines, not selectively apply scrutiny based on political advantage. And then comes the part that should stop everyone in their tracks. The idea, floating around at the highest levels, of an executive order that could allow a president to seize voting machines.